Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're just going to be reviewing an article on the consequences of woke capitalism, where various companies, corporations, go out of their way to virtue signal something that you obviously know they don't believe. I mean, they're just doing it to either look good or propagandize people. And as most of you know, Anheuser-Busch has recently been promoting trans issues. They've been recently making sure that everyone knows about their supports for trans rights. And so let's see what this article says from the New York Post. Anheuser-Busch exec reveals how lefty investment firms pressure companies to go woke. Okay. So I've heard a number of things about this, things like BlackRock, Vanguard, having certain environment, social governance, ESG ways of divvying out money to organizations. And so these organizations pretend to be woke for the sake of getting access to that money. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth it when profits are spiraling, when the customers don't like it? Is there a point to wait? I don't need these headphones on. I got a new setup, a new webcam setup, and a new microphone, and so I don't actually need the headphones anymore for speaking to you. So yeah, we got rid of the headphones, and so we see here talking about pushing trans issues on their Bud Light customers, and really, you just have to think about it like, is the Bud Light audience the ones that would be interested in trans rights? No, not typically. But then it's like, I heard a video on why the person did what they did, the marketing executive or whoever she was. But she was trying to create this big tent coalition for drinking Bud Light. But you have to recognize when your current core constituency is radically opposed to the new people that you're trying to bring in. Telling a bunch of beer drinkers to support trans people is probably not going to go over well. And these people are just so decoupled from reality that I know we're kind of going off on a tangent away from the article, but I mean, it's important to talk about. They're so decoupled from reality that, like, they don't recognize something that is immediately obvious to someone who isn't educated from Harvard. Like, it's like, you have to think in a certain ivory tower mentality to get to the idea that I can just have both current Bud Light drinkers and trans people drinking Bud Light at the same time. Like, that's going to go over well with my current customers. It's obviously not going to go over well. But for some reason, these people just do not understand how the world works. Oh, it says I talked about it. I've actually not read the article, so I'm trying a new thing here where I do kind of like a read along, and you get my reaction to things. So I'm providing news and commentary while at the same time ingesting the content. I've obviously heard things about this in other contexts, but I did not know they were going to specifically mention BlackRock and Vanguard here. State Street. Okay, I've heard State Street is like the hidden third one that is not as powerful as BlackRock and Vanguard, but they're mentioned sometimes as well. Use their clout to promote agenda politics being pushed on them by progressive lawmakers, overseeing government pension funds that the companies profit from. Okay, yeah. I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. You're going to tell me that the trillionaire people are being forced to do things by progressive lawmakers. You got the causality wrong there. That's reversing the causality, where our entire government is completely beholden to corporate interest. If you had to say, like, who's at the top of the food chain, who's at the top of the hierarchy, it would obviously be big businesses, big banks. It's definitely not our government in any way, shape, or form. And so sitting here trying to make the argument that, oh yeah, these trillion-dollar corporations, yeah, they're listening to the government. Yeah, sure. You're not convincing me here. Part of this is the elasticity of the product, product or service, you could say. And that is that, and we learned about this in economics classes. I'm remembering from when I was tutoring micro and macroeconomics. People will stick with the product if they don't have other options. If this is something required that they purchase that product or service, they will stick with it. If there are other substitutes for it, so like a Bud Light drinker could go to something like Modelo or something else, they would switch to that instead. Or they could just give up beer drinking and switch to wine drinking or vodka drinking or something. Or they could just give up alcohol in general, because alcohol is not one of those necessities. Yes, you heard me, alcoholic subscribers. It's not a necessity. It's okay. It's nice. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a necessity. And so you have to recognize that you can push ESG policies for things that people completely, absolutely need, and there's no other alternatives for it. But when you're pushing these woke politics, when there's easy alternatives that in a lot of cases taste better than Bud Light, I mean, what response do you expect to get here? Like, what are you hoping from your customers? They're obviously going to leave. But I think the assessment here is, and I don't think it's just that one executive lady that's taking the full brunt of this, and I think she might have even been removed from her job, at least temporarily, at Anheuser-Busch. But the company had to approve this. They had to go through the mental calculations to say, yeah, we're going to lose some of our core constituency here, but that BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street money, we're going to get some of that ESG money, so it must be worth it. And who knows if they're right, because we don't actually know how much money they're getting in exchange for selling out their core constituency for Bud Light. I'll take in the firms they invest in heavily. In California, for example, they recently have mandated these large pension funds that they divest from things like fossil fuels and oil and gas. And then when Bill de Blasio, former mayor of New York, was there, he did the same thing. But they also tell BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard if they're going to manage their money, they have to commit to things like ESG, diversity, equity, inclusion, and adopt firm-wide commitments that they therefore then force onto all major companies and corporations. Okay, so we're not going to look at scary thing, scary person. So something to consider here, and people don't often understand this, is when we're talking about equity, equity is not the same as equality. People really don't understand that. I mean, I remember teaching graduate classes, and they really thought that genuinely thought equity was the same as equality. They just thought it was a synonym. Equality is equality of opportunity, and equity is really equality of outcome, but it's usually equality of outcome towards the lowest common denominator. So if you have Billy, Bob, and Joe, who are all differently gifted at math, let's say, and Billy gets 100%, Bob gets an 80%, and Joe gets a 60%, you give not the best rewards to everyone. You typically give the worst rewards to everyone, and you punish the people who do even better so that the scores are more in alignment, and so Joe doesn't feel bad about getting the lowest score. And that tends to be what equity is. It's catering towards the lowest common denominator and punishing the people who do best. And quite frankly, oftentimes in higher education, I was one of the people that did best, and I got punished for it often, and I didn't understand that system. It was an equitable system where if you're doing too well, they have to, it's kind of like a nail that's stuck up. You have to hammer it back down. And that's what they do for people. I do want to say something on this. We're seeing that Bud Light and Target, they're facing consequences for their woke capitalism. But you have to recognize that these companies keep doing it because it's still seemingly profitable, or they have a purpose that is more important to them than profit. And so that's something concerning to think about. So I saw people on Twitter like throwing victory laps for doing this, being somewhat successful at this. And I have to say, if you were actually successful, these companies wouldn't be doing it. But they're still doing it. So there's something there that is of benefit to them. And it could be like traditional media and entertainment as well. The point isn't actually to make a profit. Maybe the point is to propagandize. And if you see that these companies end up going bankrupt despite getting ESG money, then you have to recognize that the goal wasn't profit all along. The goal was actually to propagandize. So let's keep an eye on that. Are these companies actually dying from their woke politics? And if they are, they weren't making alternative sources of money that were profitable enough to make up for their lost customer base. Is that the end of the article? One sec. Check. Oh, it is the end of the article. So a weird ending for an article there. But yeah, that's really all I had to say on the matter. Is this situation with woke capitalism? You have to figure out what is causing it, and I think we have a decent idea at this point, and that is that it's there's other sources of money that people are getting, but then it's like, are they going to continue doing this after they see companies go under from doing this? And if they are, the goal isn't money, it's to propagandize you. So if you like this video, please actually upvote it. If you want to see more content from me, we're constantly upgrading things, constantly advancing. Please subscribe to our channel and you'll get more content from us. We actually have, despite not getting pushed to the algorithm because we're based in the Philippines and they only push our content to Southeast Asian countries, despite that, we actually have like really high view durations. We have really high impression click-through rates. We have really high likes to view counts. So we're doing pretty well for ourselves. And I'm fully expecting that after we get everything settled in and I start to do some marketing and going to do interviews on other channels, that we're gonna get a lot of subscribers, a lot of viewers, things like that. So for my original people who stuck with me throughout all of this growing pains, know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I can definitely see it. And we're going to make it really, really big. So thanks for sticking with us. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and adios. Spanish for bye.